Good afternoon, Center for Spiritual Living, friends and family. I am Reverend Cindy Grimes, and I'm so glad you could join us here this afternoon. If you are new to us, you might want to know a little bit about who we are. I'm going to share our community values right here. We are just one of many centers for spiritual living that is located all over the United States. We happen to be in Ocala, Florida. And this is what is important to us at Center for Spiritual Living Ocala. The very first thing on the top of our list is spiritual growth and practice. That is the whole reason we come together, is to grow spiritually and to learn practices, tools, and principles so that we can live our best lives. We value love, we value appreciation and community, we value freedom and creativity. We value health and wholeness, generosity, and financial well-being. And our mission at Center for Spiritual Living Ocala is to provide spiritual tools for personal and global transformation. That is the same as the mission of the larger organization of Centers for Spiritual Living. And our purpose is to awaken humanity to its spiritual magnificence. Meaning we believe that each and every one of us come into this world with gifts and talents that we're here to share. And our purpose at the Center for Spiritual Living is to help people identify those gifts and talents and give them whatever they need to use them to their max. And our vision is a world that works for everyone. And so we have a great program for you this afternoon. I'm super excited about it. And before that, though, I'm going to bring in our practitioner here. Hi, Donna.
Hi.
How you doing?
I'm doing great.
Good, good. You look lovely, nice and bright and cheery.
Thank you.
Yes. So it's a historic kind of a weekend, isn't it?
Oh,
Yes. And I'm not gonna lie, I'm happy. I'm happy. I'm not gonna gloat about it. I'm not gonna say anything other than it's an opportunity for healing, right? For healing and for growth for all of us. And so
absolutely. Absolutely. And that's how I feel. It's a moment in time where we can say, we pulled apart things, we've looked at that which is painful and recognize that the wound is there, and now is the time for healing.
yes.
And I feel it in my soul. I feel that there's a turning point that happens. And I know that there's a stirring within each and every person, no matter who you are. You're all looking for the same thing, to have love and freedom and acceptance, in your life and with your family. And that's what we all want. So.
Absolutely. It's blustery out today. I don't know what it's like in the rest of the country, but here in Ocala, the wind was just whipping.
Yeah,
And out in the woods walking around, and it was blustering. It was feeling like the winds of change, right? Or here. And I sat down and I got pelted by a bunch of acorns and stuff that was floating around. I thought, but that's how it is, that things are changing, and sometimes you might get battered around a little bit and all, but we're going to weather the storm.
Yeah, absolutely. And you just have to be like a really, really, really tall palm tree. When the winds come along, just bend, honey, and come on back up. I think that's what we had to do. So we're all right. We're all right. We're still here.
We're here. Yes, ma'am. So I'm going to let you pray us in. Take myself out here, and I thank you.
Oh, you're so welcome. I invite you now to just join me in centering down into that space of oneness, that space of connection. I recognize the allness of the one, that God is everywhere present. The Alpha, the Omega, the beginning, the end, the up, the down, the in, the out. All of it is God. And I know that if God is everywhere, then God is where I sit right now, in the very space that I exist. The divine energy that is the one lives and breathes and moves as me. And I know that if it's true for me, it's true for every other person. As we live our stories, as we walk around in our lives, as we interact with our friends and family, as we interact with our neighbors, and for those who seem like our opponents, we're interacting and experiencing, but deep down inside, we're all a part of the one. And as our experiences come and go, as the clouds in the sky, because we're connected, I know and speak my word knowing that we are starting to align ourselves to the truth of what is, that we're all one and that we're all connected. And in all of it is God unfolding and expressing. It is with joy and love that I accept that. For my neighbors, my friends, my family, I accept that unconditional love of the divine. I accept that. I accept that every good thing is happening for me and everyone else. And we are always moving forward and upward as a human race together, unfolding. And I release it into the law, knowing that it's already done. And so it is.
And so it is. And so it is. Yes, we are experiencing the one. And let's just know that and come from that place.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for that beautiful prayer.
You're welcome, Sana.
All right. We'll see you later. Will you be on the Zoom call after?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Wonderful. All right. Awesome. So we'll see you later.
All right.
All right. So, all right. Our guest today is a young minister out of California who I met when I was in the ministerial program. Didn't know each other. We just kind of saw each other from a distance, didn't know each other very well. And when I went for my second ordination panel, that's a story in and of itself, and some of you know that story very well. For those who don't know, ordination panel is when you have an interview with a group of ministers who, after you've served for a period of at least 3 years, basically interviews you, looks at what you're about, and decides yay or nay, you're a minister for life, you're ordained or you're not. And so I went through the process twice. And the second time was at our retreat for Centers for Spiritual Living. We have a retreat every few years in a place called Asilomar, which is really important and beautiful for all of us. And I was getting ready for that second ordination panel. And I didn't realize how much pain I was in really from not having passed it the first time around, and how I was putting myself kind of back on the line again and feeling very vulnerable, and was not really in a good space. And got there at the beginning of the weekend, very upset that the panels were not being held at the beginning of the weekend, instead at the end. And now I had to go through this whole experience with all of these people and not know what was going to happen at the end, and so on and so forth. Anyway, our guest speaker was one of the speakers at Asilomar. And you'll see when I bring Elisha in that we couldn't be more different than one another. And his speaking just cracked my heart wide open. It was just what I needed in that moment. It was a deep healing for me. He shared so authentically and so beautifully, and just so much from his heart that I really wanted to just share him with everybody. And so this is my opportunity now to share Elisha with you, and we're going to have a conversation about paradigm shifts and what's going on with all these winds that are blowing in our country, and some hope for the future. So let me bring him in here. Elisha.
Hi, Cindy.
Hello.
Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you for joining us.
I'm grateful to be here.
Yeah, so as people can see now, right? Like, you're young enough probably to be my son. And look a little different, I'm one of those baby boomer ladies. So I'm not sure that you and I would have been running in the same circles if it was not for CSL. So
we are now.
we are now. And I just love that you are representing, young folks, and just in who you are, your authenticity. So I just, why don't you tell our people, my folks here at the Center for Spiritual Living, a little bit about your story and how you came to be a minister in this movement at such a young age.
Yeah, well, I guess I'll tell, but I guess I'll start by telling, my half of your story that you told in my intro. As that talk at Asilomar was so much about, this journey that has gotten me to to where I am now, which has been a long, weird road. Just my process through ministerial school took me, you know, just about 7 years, I think, from start to finish, where most people go through that program in 2 to 3. And I struggle with learning disabilities, and I have all sorts of stories about myself and my own history. And that process brought all of it up, and I've known that ministry was the only thing that I was on this planet to do since I was like probably 12 years old. I think I have a memory of being very young. Also a gay kid growing up in a very conservative Christian family. And that had just, really twisted my mind for much of my early life. And really, depression has been this common theme throughout my life. And so it's just been this churning of so much throughout my experience that has continuously led me towards the person that I'm always becoming, which I think is kind of which I believe is really true for all of us. That it's the churning that really makes us who we are. And what a moment of churning we're all living in right now, where so much is being brought up and challenging us to really question who we are. And, my whole life has been about questioning myself. Growing up in the family that I grew up in with the orientation I have and identifying as a queer person, like there was always this questioning of who am I and my worthiness and my understanding of God and all of that. And then through education and trying to learn about the world, I have struggles with that. And so that's brought up so much, but it's in all of that questioning that the deeper me has continued to emerge. And again, I really see that happening around us right now. Like there's that deep questioning of who are we is our collective project right now, of really looking ourselves deep. I feel like many of us probably have been using the metaphor for 2020 that this year is about clear vision. I started saying in January last year, like, this is the year of clear vision. This is the year that we all see things for as they are, like see things for what they are, see people for what they are, see ourselves. Well, and oh my goodness, if 2020 hasn't knocked on every single one of us and said, look at something, like, I don't know where you were, but like every one of us, I feel like something has been brought up this year for us to really look deeply at ourselves. And it's that's going to cause us to become more.
And as you're saying that, I'm marveling and just how grateful I am that I found this path before. So I had some spiritual muscle build up to be able to go through this year and really fare pretty well, for myself, just speaking for myself. And one of the other things that you said that just struck a chord for me was the idea of the longer that you're on the spiritual path, the more you're finding out who you are. It's like being on the spiritual path doesn't mean you become something different, right? Or other than who you are. It means that you become more authentically who you are.
Mm-hmm. Ernest Holmes in The Science of Mind somewhere says there's this line that's always stood out to me that I always repeat, but it's something to the effect of, there's a presence that goes before me that makes the way easy and clear. And he has this very beautiful fluffy words for it. But the part of it that I really love is that there's this presence that goes before me. And I believe that there is a one out in front of each one of us, in a sense, that's always luring us, saying, come be me, come be me, come be me. And it does so through our desires, through our longings, through our fears, through our criticism of ourselves. Like that voice is the one who's always saying, like, emerge, emerge, emerge. And I feel it so deeply, calling us as a human family, as an American family, as a global family. Like, I feel that calling of, like, emerge so powerfully right now.
Now, did you always feel like there was that thing in front of you? I mean, depression, and I've been depressed. I can't say that I suffer depression, but definitely I lean more toward that than, say, anger, rage, That's a much easier place for me to be in.
Yeah.
Uh, but did you always have that sense of there is something in front of you that's leading you out, or was there a moment where it was like, wow, I'm here for a reason?
You know, I think I might be prone to some sort of external experiences or something. You know, I've been called by something my entire life. And there's been a allure ever since I was even like 5 or 7 years old. I remember having like really distinct visions of the life that was calling me. And so much of my life has unfolded from a lot of those visions. And I feel like for whatever reason, that connection has always been very clear for me.
Mm,
Um, and it's been the questioning of that again, you know, that has kind of been the wiggle, if you will. But it's just always been there. But it's the more I've become myself, the clearer that call. It's like I've always known that it was there, but only in my emerging now am I even getting clear about what's actually been calling me all along.
right.
You know, and I really believe that every one of us has a something that calls us,
Hmm.
even if we don't know that that's what's happening. I feel like
Right.
there's a pull on each one of our souls that's calling us in a direction always. And I'm grateful for whatever reason that it's something that has been so loud for me that I've never been able to ignore it.
Yeah.
Because I see a lot of the examples that raised me, a lot of the people in my world, you know, do everything that they can to really fight against that thing, to live in another's story, to live in other paradigms where other paradigms are imposed on them, so that we're not able to listen to our soul's calling. We're just trying to survive, or we're trying to break through the systems around us in order to actually be ourselves.
Right.
Um, and so I've had a lot of, I think a lot of just the privileged circumstances around me in my life have allowed me to have that just less noise to be able to hear into myself.
Yeah. Well, you appear anyway to be very self-expressed.
I've never been able to not.
It's awesome. It's just one of the things that I just fell in love with you about, that your just ability to be yourself, like to cut through the BS. As you mentioned the word, paradigm, and that's been like my thing for the year. Is to identify the paradigms, right? The belief systems that we hold that are not serving us, so we can let it go and step into something new.
Mhm.
And that kind of a shift, it's radical and it can be painful, and people don't get it, but like we're in the midst of one right now. Would you agree?
Yeah,
Yeah.
greatly, you know, and I think that if there's ever been a moment where we can actually see it so clearly, I think we're living in it.
Yeah.
You know, and that, you know, Michael Beckwith says that we all live on the same planet, but everybody lives in their own world.
Mhm.
And I really believe that we all live in worlds within worlds within worlds. You know, there's the collective world that we all see and sort of share out there. Each one of us has worlds inside of us. And then, depending on which part of consciousness or which part of society we're part of, we live in whole bubbles of worlds and experience. And right now, it's never been clearer to me, in my life at least, how many different worlds exist right here.
Yeah.
And those worlds are paradigms. Those are the different, like, worlds that groups of people live in. And we've seen in the last week that there's two very different paradigms living side by side, overlapping on top of each other all over this nation. And
Mhm.
they're so incredibly different from each other that literally we can look at the same thing and see two completely different things happening. And that has been this weird thing that's been happening in my mind as I've been watching all this over the last week, especially. I've had a lot of feelings and stuff come up about what I've been seeing. But the thing that I'm finding to be the most inspiring thought, and I'm just going to talk about the election just for really quick. I'm not going to get too political, but what I see is the potential for balance and harmony in this great moment of what appears to be divide. And what I mean by that is looking at how 50-50 this whole thing has been all the way across, and looking at the new government that's going to be emerging in the next months as this all happens, that much of the House and the Senate and Congress and all that is going to be very balanced as far as the numbers are concerned, which means that all we have to do to break a paradigm, to make a step forward, is going to be to convince one person, to engage one or two people in a story of changing their mind. And suddenly it's like, oh wow, the potential power that is in connecting with one person and reaching across a divide of otherness and finding a connection and a shared value or a shared project or a shared viewpoint could then sway the whole movement, right? And if the things are, if the balance is just that close, there's that much more invitation for us to find a way to work together, to listen to each other, and to actually be willing to try to hear into the other paradigms so that we can first just try to understand where people are coming from.
Mm-hmm.
Because we can't do anything if we don't actually understand each other. And first we all have to figure out how to recognize that, like, there's different worlds here, and that we have to translate across these worlds. Jean Houston is a teacher of mine, and she's been saying all the whole time I've been working with her that, the greatest challenge or invitation for us in this emerging decade is going to be to bridge the great divide of otherness.
That's the paradigm right there, right? Is this belief that we are all separate from one another.
Mm.
And that what I do doesn't really make a difference to anybody else, except for maybe, the little bit of ripple that's in my immediate circle. And we're fine. I think that COVID showed us, we are all connected. You can't say, let's just keep this little group over here. It's kind of, I hate to be gross, but it's kind of like saying, okay, this is the peeing end of the pool. Okay.
Exactly.
Right. I mean, it's crazy to think that we don't have an effect, or that we're not, that either we're not having an effect or we're not affected by others, or the whole idea of other as the paradigm, right? That we're all the one.
And I think that one of the things I'm hoping has become more and more clear this year is really this thing of how interconnected we all are. Like, as a global society, how interconnected we are, how connected we as individuals in living beings are to the earth and our relationship to the planet and how it can support us, as well as our interconnectedness as people. That really, 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 like, every one of our choices is affecting other people. And for a big portion of our society, I think that there's been hopefully a big wake up call this year of how much blindness, especially people on the more privileged side of this experience, like, to start seeing how much we couldn't see before, to actually even be able to, like, to see into other people's experience,
Right.
and to realize how much our choices, our lack of choices, our awareness or lack of awareness is actually creating in the world for other people. And in New Thought and in Science of Mind, there's what I think is sort of a fallacy in the culture of New Thought, is that you are your own independent creator and you're making your reality happen. And I really believe that that's true to an extent, and that it's actually the collective consciousness that's creating 90% or 99% or some great percentage of most of our experiences. And that we often don't acknowledge that the collective consciousness is creating into people's lives all the time, and that we're all building this collective experience, and that no one of us is creating in a vacuum, and that people's positive or negative creation is not just necessarily their own thinking, their own consciousness. It's like you said, we're swimming in a pool, and everyone is experiencing everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And where we are in that experience of each other is not necessarily the responsibility of the person who it's being inflicted on. It's the person who's it's like there's this mutual creation that we've been blind to, and we just keep wanting to say my experience is my experience and your experience is your experience, that's your truth. And it's like no, like there's one experience happening here that we are all part of, and we need to realize that like we can't pull on one side without the other side being affected, and we have to do this work to actually build a new story so that we can find a world that works. If that, we claim that vision, we have a world that works for everybody. Like that's our tagline for CSL.
Mm-hmm.
And in order to get there, it's going to take everybody.
Yeah. Well, the danger is, what happens, I think, for some folks in our movement, and what we get accused of is the spiritual bypass. And, so we get so focused on the vision that we don't thoroughly enough investigate what is here right in front of us, right? Like where we are right now. The vision is great. And I've said this before. You can say, I want to go to Santa Cruz, to the CSL in Santa Cruz from Ocala, Florida. That's my destination, right? But I can put it in my GPS and put CSL Santa Cruz, right, in my GPS. And if that GPS doesn't know where I am right this moment, how's it going to tell me to get there?
Mm-hmm.
Right? So we have to acknowledge the truth of where we are, and we've not been willing to do that.
Yeah.
They're intentionally, purposefully blind, or wanting to hold on to whatever advantage we may have, or, unintentionally just not seeing what is actually there.
And you said something that just sparked for me. In science, in New Thought, we often talk about, it's all God. We have this sort of overlying philosophy that it's all good, which activates that spiritual bypass thing. It's like, it's all God. That's the thoughts and prayers thing, like, ugh. But what I've come to believe is that what we actually mean when we say it's all perfect is that it's a perfect reflection. It's not that what's out there is perfect. It's that the process of reflecting collective consciousness is reflecting perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
And this year, I feel like, has been this potent reflection of what is living in the mind of America all over the place. And we see it. And it's showing up as many different things. And it's reflecting back to all of us what's ours to do. And many people are seeing their reflection for the first time. And many people have been staring at it for a long time and are just grateful that people can even see themselves. It's like these worlds are clashing, but the reflection is available if we're willing to look at it.
Right. And it's scary, and sometimes it's not what you think it is, and sometimes you don't like what you see, but it's all necessary.
Mm-hmm.
All necessary. Is another great analogy. I just finished reading a book called Caste by Isabel Wilkerson. It's amazing, and it talks about this. The paradigm that we are living in right now is really a caste system that was put in before any of us ever,
Absolutely
taught. And yet this is where we are. And the analogy she uses is of, you buy a house, right? And it may need some renovation. You didn't cause the problem, right? That's my house. That's my situation right now where I am. It's like a 45, almost 50-year-old house that I've only been in, for X amount of time, but I'm living in it now. So even though I didn't cause the problem, I didn't set the ball in motion, I'm still responsible for taking care of what I'm living in right now.
Yep.
Right? So we don't get to pass the buck to somebody else. Hey, that wasn't my fault. Well, it wasn't your fault, but here we are. What are we going to do about it? How do we move forward?
And, and that's been my prayer, again, is that this year brings out of all of us and I think I'm starting to look at 2020 like from the back end, you know, like you're trying to get that 2020 hindsight. It's always clearer, right? Like, so here we are. It's like the end of the year, and I keep thinking towards the like, let's harvest this year. Like, what have we gotten from this, you know? And I think that if anything, I'm hoping that everyone has been left with this is what's mine. Like the buck stops here. What you just said, like if it's landed, everyone I'm hoping has a piece that they're willing to look at now. And I've had this vision that, you know, we talk about paradigm shift and building a world that works for everyone. And I've had this vision that what if 2020 was like the thing that we all needed to shake us so that we could be sifted, and that whatever got shook, is that a word? Whatever got shaken out of each one of us, that's your piece of the puzzle. Like if you've been inspired to build something, if you've been inspired to look inside of yourself and start to detangle like all that stuff that's in there, if you've found a way to bridge connection, if you're inspired to reach out, if you're inspired to march, if you're inspired to start a corporate company, if you're inspired to write a book, like, you know, if you're like whatever the inspiration has come out of this year, I feel like that's everybody's piece. Like take that piece now. And if, you know, many of us have gotten the ugly look in the mirror, it's like, okay, take as long as you need and figure that thing out.
Mm-hmm.
Because once you do, you're going to be available for more. You know, and some of us have been moved this year to start things like outside of ourselves because we realize now is the time. And it's like, okay, go forward, like go do. But I really believe that this year is the year we can begin to build the world we've been talking about. Like, let's begin to take the vision that we've been casting of a world that works for everyone and start building it. Like right now, you know, and whatever was most disturbed in you this year or inspired in you this year, take that and run with it. Like, figure it out.
Right.
You know, and because that's your piece, and the more we each identify what our piece is, the more we can start to put the puzzle together, the more we can start to see the picture. And unfortunately there's no picture on the box for this new puzzle, and everyone has to color in their own piece, you know what I mean? It's like, and then we're going to build it, but we have to, everybody, all of us, like say, yes, I'm willing to do the work, whatever it is, and then start to do it together.
Yeah. Beautiful. And that was a great lead in into your ministry and what and you got going. So why don't you tell people, because I feel the same way that you do, absolutely, that we've talked about this vision, you know, and we're told you don't have to know the how, which is wonderful, right? You don't have to know the how yet. You don't have to know all the pieces, just get moving. But, you know, sometimes we just stay like envisioning.
Mm-hmm.
You know? But we're not just supposed to just vision it or just, you know, like we say, treat and move your feet. Yes, pray, but do what you have to do, right? Get into action. We don't just talk about it. There are actions that we need to follow up with. You know, accountability, right? You want to see what's there. You want to take responsibility for what's yours and follow through and do, you know, what needs to be done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I'm in the process of establishing a new ministry. I'm calling it a mystery school because I believe that it's about a learning process. And I have this curriculum that I'm developing and this sort of small circles of people that I'm bringing together to begin to identify what's your project? Like, what is your thing that you want to work on right now? Like, what's been brought up for you? And then we take you through a curriculum to just look at your project with a continuously changing lens. And so I have this sort of way of seeing the world, or sort of model that I'm working with right now in these classes, to help us take our project or look at ourselves or the world and try to look from as many different angles as possible to change the shape of what we're looking at so that we can see into new ways of doing things. And really, I'm really passionate about project-focused, practical use of spiritual tools. You know, I think that in a lot of our science of mind, new thought communities, we get a lot of really useful information and great philosophy. And sometimes we're told to now go change your life, go live, go vision a new world. And I think we oftentimes need like much more intimate walking through this and applying it to one area of our lives. I really believe that if God is all there is, then that means everything is everything. And if we want to make change, start anywhere.
Mhm.
And if you can just take one area of your life, one project, one thing you want to work on, and bring it into a group of people who are doing the same thing, and begin to share that with others while emerging into a new way of thinking, we can then start to activate something new for ourselves. And if we can change one thing in our life and see it demonstrate and see that the power of community, the power of working something can really make a difference, if we can actually step by step see how we did that in one area of our life, we can then start to do it in other areas of our life or in things, other areas of the world, other areas outside of ourselves. And I am so passionate about taking new thought principles and getting them outside of, quote unquote, the church walls. Ernest Holmes, I believe, said something to the effect of take this philosophy and bring it back to your churches, take it back to your synagogue, take it back to where you came from and apply it there. And what does it look like for us to take these principles and take them out into business, take them out into our communities, take them out into, social systems, into the world? Like, what does it look like to apply these things in education and community building? What does it look like to take this philosophy and apply it to particular project areas and begin to work it out into the world? And that's really what I'm building right now, is in seeking to call together as a group of people who really want to begin to work actively on their piece of building this world that works and taking on our piece of the puzzle, and then getting together with other people who are holding their piece and saying, how can we fit these together and see where our individual projects can support each other to become collective projects, to become the way that we actually step by step can start moving towards living in a world that works, as opposed to just saying that that's our vision.
I love that. I think I'm going to be in your class.
Do it. I would love. We would have a good time together.
We would have it together. We would have it. But, I'm doing a class as well, and it dovetails really so beautifully with what you're talking about, because my project is bringing peace building, like peace literacy skills. How do you heal from emotional hurts?
Mm-hmm.
How do we heal our relationships when there's been a betrayal, when there's been a breach, when there's been trauma, pain? Like, what are the tools for that?
Yeah.
Not just in the church, but how do we do it in our schools? How do we put these ideas in the criminal justice system? And it's what you're saying, bring people together in circle, because it gives you those different angles, right? On whatever the topic is, you get a more full picture of what's in front of you.
Yeah.
And options and, ways to do things that you would not have thought of on your own.
Yeah, and I remember I talked to you the other day. I'm going to take your class too, because I really think that the more we can learn from each other, the greater perspective we have. Like, and that's across the board, And I really believe that each one of us is a particular lens, a particular formation, a particular way that divine consciousness is shining through, and that every individual person is a beautifully unique perspective, and that in order to actually see the wholeness, we need all of those perspectives. And in integral theory, I think it's Ken Wilber, says something like, no human mind is capable of 100% error, which means that everybody has something important to offer. That everyone has something, even if they're 99% wrong, maybe they have 1% that is very important. And I love that as an invitation for how we move forward is, can we start to look at everyone as having something to offer?
Yeah.
And how do we work towards a world that actually values what each individual person's gifts are, and then building a world that we support people and lifting up to live into those gifts. And that's a new paradigm. Like, that's a new world vision of our, what if our whole systems of education and everything was about lifting people up into their passions, helping people, individuals, children from a very young age find their bliss and live in their gifts. Like, it's possible, but we have to want that.
It is possible. Yeah, yeah. You know, and it's a new paradigm, but it's also in some ways as old as days, you know, as long as there have been people around. The idea of bringing people together in circle, like you're saying, you know, and in restorative practices is, you know, like what I teach, right? There's something that happens. Somebody was hurt. So you bring together the person who was hurt, the person who did the harm, their support people, and everyone sits around the table, you know, or in that circle together, and talks about, number one, what happened. But now you're getting to hear not just your perspective, which you know, but now you're seeing from the outside, what did it look like from that angle? And what did it look like from the angle over here and this other angle? You know, that you couldn't know until you got into that group setting and people are able to express and to share, you know, what that looked like for them. So it is a way of, to me, it's the experience of oneness. You know, we talk about oneness in our movement, and I always knew that was going to be my challenge as a minister, is how do I get it from up here of knowing that intellectually, like logically, I know that we're one. You see the blue marble, the pictures from space, we're all one, right?
Thing.
But still, it doesn't feel like that.
Yeah.
Sometimes, once in a while, you know, you have those moments. You feel that oneness, either, you know, you're out in nature, or for me, sometimes it's singing or being, and, you know, with my tribe, with my people, you know, and you feel that, like, that love, that, but it's, you know, like, it's hit or miss. How do we generate that on a regular, ongoing basis? And I believe that we can.
And I think that it's really what you pointed out, and what you do, and what a bunch of what I'm doing is really about bringing people together and being in circle. Whether it's, I think it's truly more powerful when we can actually physically be in the same space and be in a circle actually, but we can metaphorically be in circle even virtually. And it's the idea that we are coming together for a purpose, and in that purpose we have collective attention, and in that collective attention there is oneness, and in that oneness healing is available. And it's, you know, when we can come together and sit across from each other and actually talk and actually listen, we start to see ourselves.
Yes.
We start to see that, wow, we look a lot different, and we come from different eras and different times and different places. But the more we talk, the more I see how much we have together. And it's in that togetherness that we find ourselves, the other. And that is the one thing that can break down that great divide of otherness, is when we see ourselves in the other person. But we actually have to be willing to, in a lot of times, sit down and shut up and listen. For a lot of us, you know, is be willing to listen, be willing to actually ask questions, and listen to answer. Listen not to answer, but listen to hear. You know, and that's a huge task in and of itself, you know, as a spiritual practice, as a spiritual ideal, is to learn how to listen.
Yes, it takes courage. All of this work really takes courage, and, you know, as universal as I think it is, it's not everybody's up for it, right? Some people don't want to do that work of self-reflection and all. I think, but I think, as Michael Beckwith says, you know, pain pushes until vision pulls. And I think maybe the events of the past year have caused enough pain that more and more people are waking up. And then it's going to become just self-evident, right? It's just going to, you know, what is it when there's a new idea? First it's ridiculed, and then it's violently, like, opposed, and then it becomes like, well, of course, yeah, this is how it is.
Yeah. And I think we've seen that as a very slow sort of ebbing and flowing growth process in the United States, that there's this cultural history that needs deep unraveling, and we've done it in little waves here and there. Little bits of rights keep emerging for different groups of people, but it's like it expands and it contracts and it expands and it contracts, but it keeps coming up to be healed, to be brought up. And I think we are witnessing that cycle that you just mentioned once again, and let us, I know that there's when Science of Mind was two organizations for a long time, and, Ernest Holmes blessed the separation in the very beginning. He said, common sense will win in the end. And eventually the organization came back and became one thing again. And I have to believe that common sense will win in the end. That the long arc of the universe is towards evolution, that there is a power for good in this universe that is not for us to use, but is using us and is available through us. And I believe that there is that the nature of evolution is towards greater good, and that common sense will win in the end, and that the arc of the universe is towards love. I have to believe that.
I am with you. It is toward love. It is toward justice. It's toward evolution and growth. And there's a point where we can't stop it. It is what it's going to do. It's going to do what it does. So we show up, right?
Yeah.
We just keep showing up. You said that so beautifully. And I'm looking at the time, and we could go on for hours, couldn't we?
Maybe we could do this again someday.
Maybe we can. Yeah, I'm looking at comments here. We got some really nice ones. Let's see, from Lita, love this conversation. Thank you for sharing your mind and your heart. And let me see who this is. Rose Recovery. Let's see. Rose looks like she's got a Quest recovery program is structured to help those affected by addiction. Well, maybe Rose will join us in the conversation after, and we can go a little bit deeper. So are you going to be able to join us, Elisha?
Yeah. I'll join you guys for about 15 minutes or so, if that works.
That would be awesome. And what I'm going to do right now is put up some information here for people to reach you if they may be interested. Now, your class is not up and running just yet, is it?
So I have a series of classes that are running right now, but they're all in motion. Probably February of next year, there's a whole round of classes that are going to be coming out, and there's a whole bunch of stuff I'm going to be offering. And so if you want information on what's emerging with this new ministry that I'm working on, you can email me at synthesisfellowship@gmail.com. You can also reach out at cslsantacruz.org or call the center even, and they can always get a hold of me if you want to leave a message. And if you're interested in supporting what I'm doing, I do have a text to give for this, and you can always text SYNTH to 44321, and that'll take you to the CSL Santa Cruz page. But all of those donations go to help support this project that I'm working on right now. And I'm also available on Facebook. Just look for me as Elisha Christopher. You'll find me. You'll recognize me, I'm sure. And I'd love to connect with anyone who wants to reach out.
And we're Facebook friends, so they can always find you through me as well.
Perfect.
Yes, you're such a bright, beautiful light, and I'm so glad you followed your heart and your intuition and that voice that's been speaking to you.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you reached out. I'm really excited to be able to engage in the conversation, and I'm just so very interested in what you're doing as well, and so I'm excited to talk more.
Well, terrific. Thank you so much for being our guest today, and
Thank you.
See Zoom in like less than 10 minutes.
Okay, sounds good.
All right, thank you, Elisha. I love you.
Thank you.
Okay. Oh, wasn't that fun? We need to do that again. We need to have another conversation, I think, maybe when he starts his classes. And so now it's time for us to share our gifts and tithes. This ministry exists because of the donations and the giving of our members, of people who are about this mission and about expanding this work in the world. And so we're so grateful. We had some trees that needed to come down, and we had a really wonderful donation that came in to take care of that. So I'm very, very grateful. I'm not stating the name of the person who gave it just yet, unless she wants us to. But just want to give thanks for everyone that gives to the center, for all those who are volunteering and again supporting us financially, because that is the only way that we are able to do what we do, is through your generous financial support. So you have ways that you can give to the Center for Spiritual Living. You can donate via PayPal at cslocala.org/donate, or you can text to tithe 352-320-5110. And what you do when you text to tithe is, you, using your cell phone, you would text to that phone number the amount of money that you want to donate to the center, and it goes right out of your account into ours as soon as you do the setup. So thank you again. And that leads us to our affirmation. And you're welcome to just, hold your hand over your heart, and I will say it and you make it yours. It is the nature of life to give of itself, as it is the tree's nature to bear fruit and the flower's nature to bloom. It is my nature to share the gifts of my time, talent, and treasure. I participate in the divine flow of life, giving generously and receiving abundantly. I am blessed and I am a blessing. I am so very grateful. And now for our closing prayer. Let me see, I think there's something going on. We have divine dining. Yes, I don't have the slide up here, but I believe it's on our Facebook page next weekend. Divine dining, it's going to be on Sunday evening, I believe at 6. If you're interested, just be sure to look at the Facebook page. It is a dinner, a sit-down dinner. There is going to be a sound bath, I believe. And I think the tickets are $30 a piece for dinner, and that money will be donated directly to the center. So it's a bit of a fundraiser. So we'd love to have as many of you join us as possible. And let's see, I think that is it. Let me see, I've got a few more comments here. We've got our Zoom discussion afterward. You can see that in our Facebook. And so our prayer for protection. This comes from our friends at Unity. And again, you're welcome to say it, or just close your eyes as I say it. The light of God surrounds us. The love of God enfolds us. The power of God protects us, and the presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, God is, and all is well. And so I pray that all is well in your life this week, and that you are able to join us again next week. And we'd love to see some of you in our Zoom discussion directly just after this, as soon as I sign off. So you all have a great week. Love you much, and we'll see you soon.